Right, this is 7th grade science, and this is 10.3, arthropod, non-arthropod invertebrates there. And hopefully you guys are having a good weekend, get lots of stuff done for your parents, and still study and don't complain about it. At least you're like able to do it in your pajamas, right? So anyways, so we've talked about vertebrates, we've talked about invertebrates, but the invertebrates that we've been talking about are arthropods. Now we're talking about non-arthropod invertebrates. So they don't have jointed appendages. They don't have necessarily, you don't really think about them even having skeletons, like outside skeletons, even though they do tend to have a framework, but it's not like what we think of. We're thinking these are mainly like worms and things like that. So I am going to show you. Let's see if I can. Oh no, it's backwards. That's not going to work, is it? Can you write backwards and then? I didn't think about that. I will send this to you is what I'll do. I'll send this to you to try to put in your notes, and because I don't think I copied these yet for you guys whenever you left the other day. But anyways, these are good to have in your notes because they're kind of things you probably haven't had before. So anyways, the first type are called annelids. And there's like 35 different phyla of these types of invertebrates, but we're just going to learn a few. And annelids are segmented worms. So when you think of an earthworm, that's what an annelid is. And they have many, many body segments, little all the way through. Leeches would also be in this group. And actually, you could even take notes while I'm talking. So, like annelids, segmented worms, earthworms, and leeches. That's pretty easy. Then you have platyhelminths. Can you spell that? Platyhelminths. And platyhelminths are flatworms. That basically means their bodies are a little bit more flattened. So you've seen the type of worms where they're just a little bit more flattened there. Flukes, tapeworms, and planarians. Flukes, tapeworms, and planarians. You can see some of the pictures on page 386 or 87 of the things that we're talking about today. And of course, flukes and tapeworms are both parasites. They often are in intestines. Sometimes if you eat undercooked meat, you can get these things. But anyways, planarians are non-parasitic. They're found in ponds, streams, lakes, that kind of thing. But the planarian is really cool. And if you look on the top of page 387, do you see how these worms can be cut and like, isn't that awesome? They can like have two heads. So like if you could get a planarian and you can like just slit its head like this or whatever, he'll just grow two heads. They're kind of hard to kill. You want them to multiply? They are called, it's a different type of reproduction. It's called asexual reproduction. You don't have to have a male and a female cell basically. And so they just reproduce like this. So this one, you can cut them in different pieces. This one will form another worm. This one will, and this one will. This one won't. It's too small of a piece there at the end, there, and it's at the end, so it's not a big deal. But anyways, that's really cool about planarians, and I think that you guys would like that. There. But anyways, those are all called platyhelminths. All right, the flukes, tapeworms, and planarians. Then you have nematodes. Nematodes, nothing to do with a frog. These are roundworms, and their bodies actually taper at both ends. So they're kind of round up here, and then they taper off. And these are the most abundant animals. The heatworm, the pinworm, the hookworm, etc. Some scientists estimate that 4/5 of all animals are nematodes. All right, so obviously we don't see them around. They're really, really small. 20,000 known species of those roundworms there. And you can see basically it's microscopic on page 387, but they brought it up to where you can see it at the bottom of the page there. So they have the greatest diversity in size as well. Some, of course, like I said, are microscopic, but there are others that grow up to 26 feet. long. And those, most of them are non-parasitic, but there's some that are. Parasitic nematodes would be the hookworm, pinworm, filaria, trichina, and then heartworm, which of course is what affects your dogs at times. That's what one thing that they treat the veterinarians are treat worms. That's basically what they're talking about. Some of that most of the time there. All right, so those are all the worm-like creatures: the annelids, the platyhelminths, and the nematodes. Nematodes being the most of anything. And then we have mollusks. Mollusks, isn't that a fun word to say? And you've got a bivalve, which bi means two. And so these basically are two shells like this. They have one hinge. What do you think of that whenever you think of an animal like that? A clam, basically. An oyster, a mussel. Those really good things to eat, in my opinion. But they're two shells, and that's easy to remember because bi means two. So bivalve, two shells joined by a hinge. Then you have gastropods that are in mollusks as well. These would be snails, slugs, conchs, cowries, nudibranchs. That's one of my favorite words as well, nudibranch. And the gastropod means stomach foot. So we know, of course, podpede, that means foot. And then gastro, that you think gastrointestinal, that kind of thing, that means stomach. Gastro means stomach. So stomach foot, basically the foot, how it moves, its locomotion kind of comes out of its stomach. So think of a snail or a slug and how they move, and you'll kind of understand that. And that's a gastropod, which is a mollusk. And then you have cephalopod, and that's when we haven't heard those prefixes, cephalopod. That's head foot is what that means. And that's like a squid and an octopus. Octopus has 8 tentacles. Squid has at least 10. That's one of the main ways you can tell a difference. But one of them also has like a internal, I don't want to say skeleton, an internal structure in its head to help kind of hold it up. But you can see, let's see here what kind of pictures they have of the, yeah, they have a picture of the squid down there. Looks a little bit different, but it'd be fun to look up some pictures of octopus and squid and tell the differences between the two. Squid has 8 arms and then 2 longer tentacles is what it does, so 10 at least. A torpedo-shaped head, fins for swimming, and an internal shell. That's what I was talking about. Shell is the word I was looking for. And then the octopus is shellless completely, and it's just squishy. And they both do have jet propulsion, and they can ink. If you watch Nemo, you understand that. You could actually watch Nemo since you're at home, and study these interesting things there. All right, so those are all mollusks there. And then you have echinoderms. Echinoderms on page 388, 389. This would be starfish, sea urchin, and sand dollars. So those aren't really considered fish. They're not considered a crustacean. They don't have a hard, crusty exoskeleton. So they're considered echinoderms. And they are like a sea cucumber, a sand dollar. All of those would be considered that. And echinoderm means hedgehog skin. That's what that word means. So I guess because they have little spines that kind of grow, and they have an internal skeleton there of calcium carbonate, kind of like a little shell kind of thing. But echinoderms have tube feet. So if you've ever watched, and if we were at school, I'd show you, I have a picture of, or a video of a starfish, and look those up on YouTube if your parents let you. You look up starfish eating a clam. So the starfish actually injects its stomach into the clam. It wraps its body around a clam. A clam shell is super, super hard to, like, we can't do it, to get into without like boiling it and killing it first. So anyways, they actually are strong enough that they put their 5 tentacles around it, and they pull that shell just enough apart to where they can inject its stomach, which comes out of the middle part of the starfish, and they inject the stomach into the bivalve, and then they eat it. They eat the clam or the mussel or whatever, and then they come back. It comes back in to the thing. So you can find that on YouTube. You can say starfish eating a clam or starfish eating something, and you can watch that. But they have these little tube feet, and they're like suction feet, and that's part of why they can pull that sucker apart like that. So that's kind of cool. Adult echinoderms have 5-sided radial symmetry. So that's one of the only things that have radial symmetry as far as animals go. And then they have 5 flexible arms or raised. Some of them have a little bit more. And then that flattened kind of body there. So they're really cool to watch. I would suggest you look up some videos on those because they're kind of cool. Then you have coelenterids. Coelenterids, it looks like it's spelled coelenterids, but it's actually coelenterids. And this would be coral polyp, medusa, jellyfish, sea anemones, say that fast 5 times, and then coral that are out there. And this actually means hollow gut. That's what that word means. And it has usually tentacles that help it capture its prey. It has what they call cnidocytes, and those are stinging cells. And, of course, you understand that by, again, watching Nemo. And so, y'all know that's one of my favorites. And then you have sponges. Sponges are on page 390, and that's called a pore bearer. And the cool thing about sponges are they were called sponges before we actually had sponges. So back in the olden days, they would get those sponges out of the sea. They let them dry out, and the flesh would decay, and they'd shake it off and clean it off, and then they would actually have a sponge that they could use, and they would get it wet, and it would that's what they used for scrubbing things, their body, or maybe the floor, Cinderella, something like that. So these are the only multicellular animals. That means that they're not just one cell. They've got a lot. Without a nervous system. So they have no nervous system whatsoever. And there's about 5,000 different species of sponges. Nowadays, most of our sponges that we would actually use in cleaning or whatever on our bodies or whatever, those are man-made now. But some people still can get these natural things like that. So that's kind of cool. They don't recommend that anymore. That we don't want it to bother the sea life, but that's what they used them before. And you can see the different kinds, some of the different kinds there on page 390, and then jellyfish over there with the stinging tentacles, the cnidocytes that we talked about with coelenterids there. All right, so I will send you these notes over 10.3 to where you can copy them, and that will actually help you a lot. Do section review 10.3, and that'll help too. And I hope you have a great week.